On November 22, 2025, the world was stunned. A Ukrainian fighter jet struck deep inside Russian-held territory, devastating a key airbase in a bold and unexpected move. The attack was not only a display of military prowess, but also a message to the world. Ukraine was no longer content to simply defend its borders. The strike sent shockwaves through military and political circles across the globe, as experts scrambled to understand the implications of this unprecedented action. This wasn't just a tactical win, it shattered the long-held narrative of Ukraine as purely defensive. For months the world had watched as Ukraine endured relentless attacks, but this operation proved they could take the initiative and strike back with precision and confidence. The daring raid signaled a dramatic shift. Ukraine now had the means and will to strike back, not just absorb blows. It was a turning point, showing that Ukrainian forces were capable of planning and executing complex operations deep behind enemy lines. Moscow was caught completely off guard, its air defenses bypassed by a level of sophistication few thought Ukraine possessed. The Russian military, long considered one of the most formidable in the world, suddenly appeared vulnerable in its own territory. The operation showcased the impact of advanced Western technology and meticulous planning. Behind the scenes, months of preparation, intelligence gathering, and international cooperation had made this moment possible. Suddenly, the war's dynamics changed overnight. The illusion of stalemate was gone. The front lines, once thought to be static, now seemed fluid and unpredictable, with both sides reassessing their strategies. Military analysts scrambled to understand how Ukraine pulled off such a feat, realizing Kiev's capabilities had evolved. The world's perception of the conflict shifted, as new questions emerged about what might come next. For Ukraine, it was a symbol of hope and strength. The nation rallied behind its military, inspired by the courage and ingenuity that made the impossible possible. For Russia, a humiliating wake-up call. The war could now reach home. The sense of security that once surrounded Moscow was shattered, replaced by uncertainty and fear. The conflict had entered a new, unpredictable chapter. One where the balance of power was suddenly in question, and the world watched anxiously to see what would happen next. Ukraine's bold strike was not a spontaneous act, but a direct and calculated response to a rapidly deteriorating situation on the ground. Just days earlier, Russia had dramatically escalated its campaign, unleashing a wave of destruction that shocked the nation and the world. On November 18th and 19th, Russian forces launched their most intense aerial bombardments since the start of the war, targeting not only military sites, but also civilian neighborhoods and critical infrastructure across Ukraine. In the city of Ternopil, cruise missiles struck residential buildings, killing dozens of people, including children, in what many described as a deliberate act of terror designed to break the spirit of the Ukrainian people. Hundreds of drones and missiles rained down over a matter of hours, crippling power grids, plunging entire cities into darkness, and sowing fear even in western regions near the Polish border that had previously felt relatively safe. Ukraine's leadership quickly realized that simply defending against these attacks was no longer enough. The missiles and drones were being launched from deep inside Russian territory, areas that, until now, had been considered out of reach for Ukrainian forces. To protect its people and prevent future tragedies, Ukraine decided it had to raise the stakes for Russia by striking back at the very source of the attacks. The motivation was clear: retaliation, deterrence, and a demonstration of resolve. Ukraine wanted to show that it would not remain passive in the face of aggression. By targeting a high-value Russian military base, Ukraine aimed to send a powerful message that it could hold Russian assets at risk, and that Moscow would have to reconsider its strategy of unchecked escalation. The strike was a calculated gamble, marking a shift from a posture of passive defense to one of active self-preservation and strategic offense. It was a message to the world and to Russia: attacks on Ukrainian cities would no longer go unanswered, and Ukraine was prepared to defend itself by any means necessary. Ukraine's success hinged on new Western hardware, especially from France. Days before the strike, President Zelensky secured a landmark deal with President Macron for Dassault Rafale F-4 jets, France's most advanced multi-role fighters. The Rafale paired with Scalp EG cruise missiles gave Ukraine the ability to strike deep with precision. The deal included up to 100 jets and advanced munitions, marking a major shift in Ukraine's air power. Meanwhile, the US upgraded Ukraine's Patriot air defense systems, boosting their ability to intercept Russian missiles. This synergy, French offensive power and American defensive upgrades, transformed Ukraine's military posture. Rafales armed with scalp missiles became the spear. Upgraded Patriots, the shield. Together they allowed Ukraine to defend its skies and finally strike back at the heart of Russian aggression. The pre-dawn attack was a masterclass in modern air warfare. Ukrainian Rafale jets, flying low and fast, exploited gaps in Russian radar, guided by months of NATO-assisted intelligence. At the critical moment, pilots launched scalp missiles from a safe distance, then banked away along a carefully planned escape route. The missiles, flying low and autonomously, struck a major Russian airbase, home to bombers that had targeted Ukrainian cities. Satellite images soon confirmed the devastation destroyed aircraft, burning fuel depots, and a crippled command bunker. Several high-value Russian jets were lost, and the base was rendered inoperable. The psychological blow was immense. Russian forces realized nowhere was safe. For Ukraine, it was proof. Their pilots could now challenge Russian air supremacy. The mission redefined what was possible in the conflict. The Kremlin's response was a mix of fury and embarrassment. State media tried to downplay the attack, but images of the destroyed base quickly spread. Russian military leaders faced outrage at home for failing to protect their assets. Moscow retaliated with a new wave of missile and drone strikes, this time targeting Ukrainian civilians even more indiscriminately. The cycle of escalation intensified, with Russia redeploying air defenses and increasing border patrols. Diplomatically, Moscow accused NATO of direct involvement, hoping to sow division among Ukraine's allies. The strike exposed deep vulnerabilities in Russia's defenses and wounded its pride. It also forced Russia to divert resources to protect its own territory. The war's front lines, and its risks, had shifted dramatically. The Ukrainian strike and Russia's retaliation sent shockwaves through NATO's eastern flank. Poland and Romania scrambled jets and put air defenses on high alert, fearing spillover. Recent Russian drone incursions had already forced NATO to shoot down threats in its own airspace. NATO responded by raising readiness, deploying more battle groups, and intensifying air patrols along the frontier. The alliance debated how best to support Ukraine while avoiding direct conflict. The events made clear the war was no longer distant. It was a real, present danger for NATO's border states. The region became the most heavily militarized in Europe, a tense buffer between Ukraine and an enraged Russia. The stakes for European security had never been higher. After the strike, Ukraine's Western partners doubled down on support. France, whose Rafales and Scalp missiles made the operation possible, reaffirmed its commitment to Ukraine's defense. President Macron emphasized that Ukraine had every right to defend itself, and that Russia bore full responsibility for escalation. France and Ukraine announced joint projects to co-produce drones and military tech, building Ukraine's self-sufficiency. The US matched words with action, upgrading Ukraine's Patriot systems and sending high-level officials to Kyiv. This support ensured Ukraine could defend itself and negotiate from strength, not desperation. Even as peace talks loomed, the West made clear a just peace could not reward aggression. The flow of advanced weaponry and political backing gave Ukraine new confidence. The message was unmistakable: Ukraine would not stand alone. The raid was more than just a military win. It was a pivotal moment that could redefine Ukraine's future for years to come. This operation sent a powerful message not only to Ukrainians, but to the world. Ukraine was no longer simply defending itself, but actively shaping the course of the conflict. For Ukrainians everywhere, the strike was a surge of hope, a morale boost that proved their nation was growing stronger, more united, and more determined. It inspired confidence among soldiers on the front lines, and civilians at home, reinforcing the belief that victory was possible. Strategically, Ukraine crossed a critical threshold. For the first time, it demonstrated the ability to threaten Russian assets deep inside enemy territory, far beyond the front lines. This new capability forced adversaries to rethink their own security and exposed vulnerabilities previously thought untouchable. Moscow was forced to divert valuable resources and attention to defend its own bases, weakening its offensive power and stretching its military thin. The psychological impact on Russian forces was immediate, as uncertainty and caution replaced their earlier confidence. This new balance of power gave Ukraine greater leverage in any future negotiations. With its enhanced capabilities, Ukraine could now negotiate from a position of strength, not desperation, shifting the dynamics at the diplomatic table. The idea of ceding territory became less likely as Ukraine proved it could inflict real pain on the aggressor. The nation's resolve was clear, and the world took notice of its determination to defend every inch of its land. With ongoing Western support and new joint production efforts, Ukraine was rapidly transforming into a formidable, self-reliant military power. The collaboration with allies not only brought advanced technology, but also fostered a sense of shared purpose and resilience. The strike marked the dawn of a new strategic reality, one where Ukraine was no longer just reacting, but actively shaping its own destiny and the future of the region. The world saw a nation defined not by victimhood, but by resilience, unity, and unwavering strength, a people determined to build a future on their own terms, no matter the odds.